James has been provincial specialist for the insect vertebrate pest management with the Ministry of Agriculture, Saskatchewan, since January of 2018. His role is primarily extension and allows many opportunities to help Saskatchewan growers navigate insect and vertebrate pest issues. Please welcome Dr. James Tansey.
Thank you, Tim. Oh, sorry. I have to apologize in advance. My voice isn't in very good shape. Picked up a bug. In a perfect world, it'll warm up as I go. So hopefully I'm still legible or understandable. Because you don't need to read what I'm saying. So. Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And it should be full screen view.
We can see your side notes or your next screen. Sorry.
There we go.
There you go.
Oh, so as I indicated, yeah, picked up a bit of a bug. I can feel my voice warming up a little bit already, but anyway, we'll get right into it. There's a few arthropod issues to cover as 2026 or 2025, pardon me, was a bit of an oddball year, and I'll try to indicate some special cases as they come up. So aptly, it wasn't much of a grasshopper year. So we did still see some grasshopper pressures in the Rosetown area, in the Saskatoon area. One thing that was really curious about the grasshopper populations in 2025 was the loss of dominance of two-striped grasshopper. So two-striped grasshopper has been our dominant pest for the last 3 or 4 years, and maybe a little bit longer, and dominant by a long shot. However, migratory can still be an important pest. Oh, there's my voice is starting to warm up now. Migratory can be an important pest. Packards can be important pest as can clear-winged. However, my two-striped grasshopper has been the dominant pest species in the province for the last few years. We did see numerous accounts of massive die-offs of two-striped grasshopper associated with a fungus on for dear life, and then rain fungal spores down on all of his brothers and sisters and friends. Another really curious thing about the Entomothera spores, they're very sticky, which in itself isn't terribly surprising. But there's also a role for an ant species in carrying these spores to grasshoppers and quite literally depositing them on grasshoppers. I don't really understand what the significant the adaptive significance of this is. I don't know how this would benefit the ants. And the authors of the paper didn't have much to offer as far as that went either, but it was pretty clearly demonstrated. So what we were seeing in the province was more numerous but rarely damaging Packard's grasshopper, and we were seeing overlapping populations of this one and Melanopus foetus. They're very difficult to tell apart. And clearwing in the southwest, we had some reports from the Kindersley area and some reports late season of two-stripe in the Saskatoon area. So two-stripe didn't evaporate. It was still problematic in a few areas, but not nearly the problem it has been in recent years. So SEIC, we rely on really heavily to do this survey, and they do a ton of work. So they conducted sampling on 1,149 sites throughout the province in July and September, coinciding with the development of adult grasshoppers. Heavy populations this past year were only seen on 8 sites of these 1,149, and these were located in the Rose Sound, Lucky Lake area, Moose Jaw, and Eyebrow areas. So taking a look at the maps from 2024 and 2025. Sorry, pardon me, I have a tickle. Maybe hey, that helped actually. Yeah, it's like starting an old motor, I guess. So 2024 versus 2025, you can see that a real reduction in the prevalence of grasshopper species between the 2 years. So another really important cereal pest, it's an important consideration when thinking about grasshoppers. I think most people realize. But here, I'm just going to go back here just to point out some differences between some of these species. If we're looking at migratory or we're looking at packards, these are considered to be ambivorous. So that is they're ambivalent about what they eat. So they'll eat a broad assortment of different host plants. They'll feed on other insects. They're happy to cannibalize each other. They're happy to feed on other species of grasshopper as well. The really curious thing about migratory, though, is that despite its really broad host range and that it will literally eat the paint off of outbuildings, it will not touch the Chenopodiaceae. So that is, it will not munch on kochia, of course. So yeah, it'll eat everything except kochia. The same goes for packards. They don't like the Chenopodiaceae very much either. They have demonstrated a bit of a preference for legumes. Two stripe, however, does prefer broadleaf plants, and clearwing grasshopper does prefer grasses like cereals. So getting back to cereal pests. Weed midge, of course, is a perennial pest in Western Canada, and we monitor for this in addition to work that's done by Tyler Wist with Ag Canada with pheromone trapping as part of his Midge Busters program. So both of these programs, the soil core analysis that we do, and that is funded by Sask Wheat and SCIC, and sincere thanks to them for funding that work. We get a pretty good look at what's happening with wheat midge populations. So what's really important for wheat midge is more than 25 millimeters of precipitation by the end of May. And if it comes in a big washing rainfall, that's really best. It stimulates these animals to complete development, so they're overwintering in the soil as larvae inside a silken cocoon. And if they experience those rains, they'll be stimulated to complete their development, enter pupation, and finish their development and emerge as adults. Hopefully, well synchronized with other adults. They don't live terribly long, less than a week. But yeah, and there can be some asynchrony with these. So you can see some delayed emergence of adults. A really important factor in wheat midge populations is this parasitoid called Macrogleanes penetrans, and it is a very important regulator of wheat midge. So one of the things that we do as part of what our contractor does as part of the provincial survey, the soil core survey, is to look at the proportion of viable midge. So that once they're parasitized, the jig is up. They're toast. They will not complete their development. So and that's really the important differentiation between a parasitoid and a parasite. So a parasitoid, kills every time. So we've all seen the movie Alien, pretty good example of a parasitoid. Pardon me. Parasite, not so much. People hardly ever die of head lice. So to that, just a quick look at the animals there. We got Macrogleanes. We have adult wheat midge there, and some larvae of wheat midge as well. Very little in the way of control efforts. We had some initial reports right around harvest of some grading issues that were initially considered to be due to wheat midge, and were later determined not be due to wheat midge. So the counts were low. These are the results from the Midge Busters program. You can see the counts were quite low. You can see as well the overlaid map there. That's the cumulative rainfall, and as I mentioned before, the rainfall is very important for these animals. So this is one that is getting a bit of attention right now. So about 2 or 3 years ago, 2022 and 2023, we were getting reports of lodging in wheat in Durham, and somewhat inexplicable, and it was relatively widely distributed. We visited some of these sites, and agronomists visited some of these sites, and happily they submitted these pupae, these flaxseed stage of the Hessian fly to us. So this is how they overwinter. They have 2 generations per year. So they're going to influence plants in the spring when they emerge as adults, and you can see some stunting associated with that. But the greater issue with that, with this pest, is the lodging caused by stem breakage. We also did a look for parasitoids as well, and this is one of the parasitoids that we isolated. I'll talk in a little bit more detail about Hessian fly parasitoids in just a moment. So telling the boys from the girls, it's not just pink boots and blue boots. You can see the male at the top, and he has at the end of his abdomen called a clasper. And you can imagine what that's for. It's for clasping. Yeah, cut to the chase there. That's a female. She has an ovipositor. Again, you can probably guess what that's for, ovipositing or depositing eggs. When you see them, see her when she's gravid or full of eggs, she's going to have this orangey hue about her. So typically brown or black, gravid females, again, reddish brown, then they are not very long lived as adults, so 1 to 4 days. So they really need to coordinate their emergence. Egg to adult in about 28 days. So, pretty normal for a temperate critter. Egg to adult in about a month. They can go into a period of what's called estivation. So they will diapause in the soil or in the litter or on the stem under conditions that are dry. So they are really well pre-adapted for life on the prairies, despite the fact that they are European insects originally. They are pretty fecund. So the girls can lay 250 to 300 eggs per female. Most of these are going to be laid on the leaf surface. And I think this photo gives an artificially, it was an extended, exaggerated look at how many eggs would be laid on the surface. That would be a pretty extreme case. So typically in groups 2 to 15, these are going to hatch, in about a week, depending on temperature. And once they do hatch, they're going to move to the stem leaf interface and hunker down there. They have very sharp structures on their mandibles, and I'll show those to you in the next slide. But they're going to scrape the leaf surface with that. The plant is going to leak, and they're going to take up those fluids. So 3 larval instars, they're overwintering this flaxseed pupa because it looks a little bit like a flaxseed, I guess, is actually the second instar, the third instar larva inside the second instar cuticle. A little bit of minutia for cocktail parties and that sort of stuff. So 1 to 2 generations per year in the northern Great Plains. There are spring and fall broods, and that's what we've been seeing in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. There is an opportunity because of greater degree day accumulation in Manitoba for greater numbers of generations. However, we're still looking at this in as part of a trapping study, and I'll talk about the trapping study coming up. So spring wheat is more significantly affected in the U.S. Pacific Northwest, as it is on most of the northern Great Plains, including prairie provinces. So, which is interesting because they tend to fixate on winter wheat in the southern part of the range, in Texas, Carolinas, Oklahoma, etc. But their phenology has switched in the northern part of the range to take advantage of spring wheat, and so everybody says that's great, which of course is not great. But anyway, so that's where that one stands. A lot of flexibility in living systems. So yeah, they have changed their life history to take advantage of spring wheat. The larvae, as I mentioned before, overwinter in those puparia on plants in winter wheat. They are considered to be a residue-borne pest, and I did mention estivation in a previous slide. They are pretty cold tolerant and don't require a lot of heat to complete their development. And so their development threshold is 1.6 degrees Celsius, and they need 343 degree days base 1.6 for adult emergence. So yeah, you say, well, what does that mean exactly? About mid-May is typically where that is in the prairies. If we get more heat, then that speeds along, and we'll get earlier emergence. So from stubble and alternate hosts is where we're going to see adult emergence. And when we're talking about alternate hosts, and I think I have a list on the. Let me check on another slide here. May not. The host list is very broad. A lot of grasses, including brome, are suitable hosts for Hessian fly. So, as I mentioned before, larvae damaged by feeding on the stem, and you can see those little hooks on their mandibles. Very, very small structure, very sharp, but they're just trying to get that leaf leakage happening, and then they'll consume the juice that comes from those. This results in stunting in the spring and stem weakening above the second node later in the season. So this is a really important consideration. If you want to know if you're dealing with Hessian fly or wheat stem sawfly almost always breaks at the first node, and you're going to get that plug of frass. Very characteristic, and they chew inside that node to weaken it. Hessian fly, typically you're going to see that breakage at the second node or higher. Although it can influence the plant earlier or lower, pardon me, but yeah, you're never going to see that frass plug with Hessian fly. So a really good, quick and dirty way to tell what you're looking for. And of course, there are no control products registered for either of them, so it's for your knowledge. So a little bit of history here. Increases in lodging, as I mentioned before, in 22 and 23. We had an anecdotal increases report in 24 as well. This was the first account of really measurable numbers since 2014, and that was in the Tisdale region. Prior to that, the only significant report was in 2010, and that was in southern Alberta. So, what the heck is going on here? He raised the question. Pardon me. Okay, so we currently don't know the population densities or population distribution on the prairie provinces. So we initiated a monitoring project, and thanks very much to Boyd Morey. He shouldered the cost of materials for this, and for everyone else here. So people from the U of A, from Alberta, from Manitoba, and from Saskatchewan as well. And in addition to our terrific ministry regional specialists and survey personnel. So yeah, thanks sincerely to everybody who participated in this. We're looking to go forward again. So we used a commercial pheromone lure, and just as a little by the by, this is a 6 ingredient recipe, which is really, really weird for cessids. So Cessidemyiidae is the family that gull midges belong in, and as a rule, their pheromone mixes aren't mixes at all. They're one substance attractants. So anyway, just a little bit of by the by on Hessian fly. So we use these Jackson traps, which is very much like a Delta trap, except it has a little lip on it. Spiked that with pheromone lure, and we had 10 sites per province, 2 traps per field. And these are what the numbers were looking like. So I apologize, the numbers are a little bit small on that legend, but if you look at the Manitoba data, we had 2,500 plus per trap at one of the sites. So very high populations in Manitoba. Moderate populations in Saskatchewan, slightly lower populations in Alberta. Some accounts of damage, but then the catch numbers were not matching local damage very well. So there's definitely more work that needs to be done on this, and we will be continuing it for the upcoming season. So I did mention parasitoids. Parasitoids are generally the most effective regulating factor of Hessian fly wherever it occurs, and it occurs worldwide now. It's been introduced to reproducing regions all over the world, considered to be cosmopolitan. Most of the world, it is relatively well contained by parasitoids, though it's also considered to be one of the world's most serious cereal pests, particularly for wheat and durum. But if we're looking at Washington State, almost 99% parasitism in some cases, a lot of parasitoids, and you can get good control, but they don't always control in the Pacific Northwest either. So a couple of or 3 major species in Idaho in the Palouse. So that's a major wheat producing region in that part of the world. Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Pediobius was the genus that was described in both of these regions. Pardon me, and in Manitoba, almost 80% parasitism of second generation with a relatively longer list of parasitoids. So you probably wonder about this picture. So this is one that I reared out at the Crop Protection Lab. We asked agronomists, and now that I have your ear, please submit puparia to either myself at the Crop Protection Lab or to Tyler Wist at Ag Canada in Saskatoon. Would like to rear these out. So from dozens of puparia in 2 years, 2022 and 2023, or 23-24, pardon me. I managed to get 2 parasitoids, and this is one of the ones that was reared out, and it is absolutely not a pediobius. So I have it tentatively identified, but I'm waiting for finalization. Might need molecular techniques to get it down there, but I'll keep picking away. Tyler, similar story, had a lot of pupae submitted, and he only got 1 parasitoid in his emergence cages. So we're looking at low levels of parasitization, and this could be a factor that's contributing to loss of regulation of hessian fly. Next animal we'll talk about, another cereal pest. This is wheat stem sawfly. We talked about this animal a little bit in a previous slide. 3rd year of the annual survey will be coming up in 2026. So we got 2 years of data already. This is another one that's funded by SCIC and SaskWheat. And sincere thanks to those groups for funding this work. We did extend the range of funding, range of the survey. So Scott Mears, the former entomologist from Alberta, is our contractor to do this. He does 100 sites. We wanted to expand the region a little bit further. So Grace and myself did another 16 sites in the Regina area. And we had reports of heavy cutting near Regina, Pence, and Elbow. There was 1 field that I sampled near Regina where every stem that I cut had a larva. So very high levels of cutting. Pardon me. Some individual fields were higher than we saw last year, but overall numbers were lower. We saw really pretty significant numbers of parasitoids. So there is a couple of members of the genus Bracon. That Bracon cephi is one of the more important one. That can be devastating to wheat stem sawfly populations. And we were seeing large numbers of parasitism. We were also seeing dead sawfly in stubs. And a lot of these, if you happen to be cutting open stems and you see pink fuzz in there, there are 5 different species of fusarium that will attack these larvae and kill them. One of them has bright pink fuzzy mycelial structures. So yeah, very, very interesting, very characteristic. These are not the plant pathogenic fusarium, though. They are entomopathogens. So looking at the survey 2024 and 2025, you can see we expanded the region a little bit, and numbers overall were less than we saw last year. Once again, a lot of deaders in stems with fungal growth and a lot of parasitism. We also did have some localized reports of barley thrips impacting barley as well as durum mid to late season, or mid to late July in the Waukon, Saskatoon regions. The trick with these ones is a lot of the work that's been done with these animals has been done in Europe. Our thresholds for barley thrips in barley are thought to be reliable for North American populations. So that is 7 to 8 thrips per stem before heading is complete. And then that's really important because once heading is complete, they're pretty tolerant of any damage that a barley thrips might do. There's only one mode of action registered for control, or one active ingredient, and that is dimethoate. That's available in a couple of different products. But yeah, look for that active. That's the only thing that's registered for their control. Thresholds in other cereal crops, not as well understood for North American populations. So a lot of the work that's been done in this animal has been done in Greece and some southern parts of Europe. And of course, that's quite different than we might see here as far as conditions go. But it's thought in those cases, a threshold of about 14 per stem could be impactful on wheat, and by proxy or by extension, impactful on durum as well. But again, we don't have the hard research to lean back on for that one in European or in North American populations. Pardon me. So I did mention that 2025 was year of the weirdie, and this is one of the weirdies. So this is brown wheat mite, typically a problem in Texas and Oklahoma, and other southern regions, and can be very, very damaging under dry conditions. We did have A bit of an outbreak in the Kindersley area, again under very dry conditions, highly stunted crop that was coupled with heavy damage from these mites. Happily, well, there's nothing registered for their control specifically in wheat. Happily, we had some timely rains in the Kindersley area, seemed to wash them all off, and the plants recovered to some extent. So I don't think they yielded terrifically, but certainly better than had things stayed dry and the mites were allowed to continue. This is another one. This is Cerodonta, Cerodonta lateralis. So it's an agromyzid. So we've all seen, very likely seen, other agromyzids. They are leaf miners. And there's one that's really conspicuous on peas in Saskatchewan. So I'm certain most of you have seen the little trace tunnels on peas. That's from an agromyzid. That particular one is not damaging, and it doesn't affect cereals. This one, however, does affect cereals, and this was the first report of this one since 2007. It is considered to be cosmopolitan as well. It's what we're going to keep an eye out for. I think it's a little early to raise the alarm bell. Nothing registered for their control, though. So what's really important for these animals, much like some of the other ones, parasitism, really important to regulate their populations. I had and special sincere thanks to the agronomist who submitted the puparia from these fields, but I reared them out and got nothing. Yeah, the square root and nothing as far as parasitoids went. So they're not being regulated by parasitoids on these sites at any rate. So we'll keep an eye out for them. A little early to be declaring any sort of alarm, but one to keep an eye out for. Much like some of the other grass pests, it has a very broad host range, including corn and brome and a number of other grassy species. And on the continued theme of weirdies, this has been a bit of a perennial weirdie. So this is one that both Tyler and I are really interested in. And when we get a report of this, we tend to, I'll jump in the car from Regina, he'll jump in the car from Saskatoon, and we'll meet at wherever this is happening to try to collect some samples and see what's going on, try to get a better understanding of them. So you can see the little red guys. Colloquially called the red bug, but Paratrechus convivus is the proper name. There is no accepted common name for this one. The Rhiparochromidae is it's the family this animal's in. That's called the dirt-colored seed bugs. This one obviously is bright red, not dirt-colored. The adults are very soil-colored. But you can see these nymphs running around, very active on the soil surface. If you plunge your hand into that soil and pull out a sample of that, you will get sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of these animals just scurrying all over the place. And they can run up your arms, so be prepared emotionally and otherwise. So they flourish in dry conditions. And some of the older references from, we're talking 100-year-old stuff from Canadian entomologists that we've managed to find indicates that there is an association with sloughs. And as the sloughs dry, they tend to move into crops and can be problematic. We seem to have a very broad host range. So just as an example of this, the 3 cases that we had in 2025 was wheat in the Kindersley area. This agronomist recommended the use of dimethoate. There is no registered chemistry for this animal. So anything you try is going to be a flyer. And the results have been really, really mixed. In this case, the application of dimethoate did not have an impact on this population. It did seem to slow them down a bit. And then a population of field crickets came in shortly thereafter and seemed to consume them all. So yeah, weirdie on top of weirdie. The next one was alfalfa near Earl Grey, and one that was this near Plenty, the mid-June, so damage increasing in 48 hours from 20 acres to 40 acres after the application of pyrethroid insecticide. And when you see the damage caused by these critters, they feed on the below ground tissues, and the plants just wilt and just vanish. So you go from nice crops in a row to bare soil, and then damage can accumulate pretty quickly, and that was after application of a group 3. So not much of a flea beetle here in canola or mustard. Striped flea beetle remains dominant in northern regions. Christopher flea beetle remains dominant in southern regions. We had a few reports of sprays, but really nothing to write home about this year. So this is from the crop report, just so you can get that provincial. Not too much going on here with flea beetles. Look at things. So diamondback moth is another important pest of canola and mustard. Pretty much all the Brassicaceae that we continue to monitor. We monitor these ones with sex pheromones or synthetic sex pheromones, and I'll show you a photo of what these look like for those who don't participate in the program. So they can be devastating pests of brassicaceous vegetables in the southern part of their range in the Americas. So from in Texas, Florida, northern Mexico. So their winter crops include a lot of brassicaceous veg. Of course, the brassicaceous veg doesn't really care for 35 degrees Celsius like the summer temperatures that they have. So they grow a lot of these in the winter. And diamondback moth can be a significant problem and be subject to spraying as often as every 2 weeks with a number of different modes of action. So they take flight when these crops are harvested, and they get into the air column at about 300 to 500 meters. And they're getting pushed along by these high altitude or medium altitude wind currents, and they can move as much as 1,000 kilometers a day. Pardon me. So they can arrive in a matter of days from northern Mexico to the prairie provinces. If those wind trajectories are connected, you can see this massive deposition of diamondback adults in the spring. And because it can be a very damaging pest, we continue to monitor for it. No apologies. So this is what the synthetic sex pheromone trap looks like. It's a delta trap. Pretty ordinary looking, or a pheromone trap, or commonly used pheromone trap. So we take a synthetic sex pheromone. It's only attractive to males, which is consistent with what you'll see with all of these pheromone traps. And we basically take what he thinks is going to be a very good day and turn it into a very, very bad day. He gets stuck to a glue board instead of playing the dating game. Of course, it's really difficult for boys to meet girls when you're teeny tiny in a big world. So the females tend to call to males through pheromones as they become receptive. Happily, our numbers were very low this year. Again, I mentioned this can be a devastating pest of canola, and happily, we haven't seen those kind of numbers in some time. So again, numbers remain low. We will continue to monitor for this one. Cabbage seed pod weevil. Of course, that was a big story in 2025, and I fear it's going to be a big story in 2026 as well. Both adults and larvae can cause damage. The threshold is 2.54 per sweep. If the crop is worth more, you want to be less tolerant of it. So you're going to want to sweep at 10 to 20% flower. You can sweep a little bit later and still get an accurate handle of what's going on with the plants or with the populations of weevils. They really like flowers. They are attracted to yellow, which is considered to be a supernormal stimulus for anthrophilic insects. I like that. It's just a really long way to say they like yellow. Anyway, so they're really, really attracted to the flowers. So early seeded canola is particularly vulnerable to the attention of these adults. And so it is invasive. We continue to monitor for this one to track its spread north and east, and it really extended its range this past year. So it extended well into Manitoba at alarming population numbers. Many reports of spraying, and the rough count from the survey was about 3 times what we saw last year, just with raw numbers. So I did mention before the adults and the larvae cause damage. The larvae are really the business end, as is pretty normal with a lot of insects. So you can see there, what she's going to do is lay a single egg, chew a little hole in that pod when that pod is about 1/2 inch long. And she's going to lay a single egg in there and then she's going to turn around and deposit what's called an oviposition deterring pheromone. And so what she's done is she's staked her claim there, and it's a warning to other females to not lay their eggs in there because they're cannibals. So yeah, they're not very good at resource partitioning or sharing, and so that larvae will continue to consume seeds. Can consume as many as 5 seeds. Then it's going to chew its way out, fall to the ground, pupate, and then emerge as an adult later in the summer. So, in addition to being interesting, the whole oviposition deterring pheromone thing has relevance as far as its importance as a pest. So that is, each of these girls can lay as many as 400 eggs. So if she's laying 1 egg per pod, 1 egg per female can have a pretty big impact on a crop. And when you're looking at many females in a crop, that can be pretty damaging. So these openings and exits can also be avenues for fungal infections, in addition to the direct damage caused by the larvae. We got several reports of secondary infestation by canola flower midge. I'm guessing it's secondary just because the weevil larvae are cannibals, and they're considerably larger than the midge larvae. I imagine the weevil larvae would happily munch on midge larvae. So yeah, if they're small, orange, and wiggly, you're probably looking at canola flower midge. If they're a little bit chubbier and all by themselves, you're probably looking at weevil larva. So looking at the surveys, I did mention a 3-fold increase in numbers, and yeah, holy nine, did they ever spread. So yeah, they spread north, they spread east, and I don't have the Western Canadian view here, pardon me, unfortunately, but they spread at economic numbers, oranges and reds all the way to Winnipeg. So they were particularly damaging in a number you can see in the southwest, southeast, and in the Indian Head region, with some pretty significant damage being reported. So it doesn't look like they can do a lot, and you're not going to see it driving by on the side of the road. The damage that might be conspicuous, like with some other pests. But yeah, please, when you're scouting, pay careful attention to those thresholds. They can do a lot of damage in a awful hurry. Pardon me. Bertha armyworm was also a bit of an outbreak pest this year. Warm spring, early summer conditions sped emergence, and we were seeing emergence about 2 weeks early for these ones. This is a native species. It's not invasive. We looked this past year at 290 sites, and thanks to everyone who participates in the pheromone trapping for this one. We had one site with more than 2,000 caught per trap, and 11 sites with more than 1,000. So big numbers of Bertha seen this year. Really characteristic yellow stripe on the larvae. These are all the same species here. This photo by John Kowalski, but they have a number of different color morphs. But that yellow stripe, really consistent. However, everything comes with a however. If you get a clover cutworm, which has a pink stripe, they can co-occur with Bertha. Just check them in for the same threshold. So if they're more than half an inch long, consider them all applicable to the threshold. The damage is indistinguishable. They'll respond the same to the same control products. So keep an eye out for both pink stripe, clover cutworm, yellow stripe, Bertha. So we will continue to monitor for this one. This was from 2024 versus 2025, and you can see that and the cumulative trap catch at the bottom left there. We saw a bit of an increase in numbers, and since outbreaks are hardly ever individual year events, I think people should be prepared to monitor for these. So keep an eye on the ministry webpage. We will indicate when peak emergence has occurred, and you should start scouting 2 weeks after peak emergence. So just looking from the crop report, just a couple of successive weeks here. So some localized hotspots. A lot of planes flying for this one. So one thing I've done is I've updated the Bertha army threshold. So the pink values, that's the old experimentally derived threshold. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it doesn't incorporate modern commodity price. It doesn't incorporate modern control price. So this was just an exercise in interpolation. Just set up the lines, follow where they go, and fill in the numbers. So you can see the Prairie Pest Monitoring Network or the ministry website for this table to help inform your control decisions. Pulse this is Cytona lineatus, the pea leaf weevil. We again conducted the survey extending further north and with a larger number of sites. So yeah, we get a lot of blending around in northern regions in old pickups, which is actually kind of fun. So monitoring for this one, what we're looking for is that characteristic notch feeding on the developing seedlings. The notch feeding is hardly ever significantly damaging, pardon me, although it can be. If it's really heavy, it can lead to plant death. Once again, the larvae are the damaging stage. And she's going to be walking the wilderness, laying individual eggs. Those eggs are going to hatch and tunnel their way into the soil, find their way into a rhizobium nodule, and hollow that nodule out. So what we saw this past year, an increase in range and an increase in numbers. There's some evidence that both this animal and cabbage seed pod weevil are not terribly cold hardy. So in the case of pea leaf weevil, as I recall, and of course my memory is never perfect, about -7, -8 is their supercooling temperature. So that's the temperature where you're going to see mass death. They can take up to those temperatures pretty easy-ish, but once they reach that temperature, yeah, you see mass death of those populations. So snow cover can be very important for these animals, and they do tend to overwinter in grassy berms and treed shelter belts. So areas that collect snow. So yeah, areas with significant snow cover at this point can really well protect these animals from the overwintering really severe cold temperatures. Pea aphid remained a problem in this past year. It wasn't the same problem it was in 2024, but yeah, the issues continued. And so we continued with our distribution of test kits, and we changed the rates associated with this. And reason being is I wanted to do a proper probit analysis on this, and those are the results of the probit analysis you can see below. So we looked at 1/10, 1/100th, and 1/1000th at the full rate and a water control. These are the results of a couple of tested lab colonies, and thanks very much to Sean Prager for giving us our starter aphids for our pet aphid colony. So they were considered to be naive and susceptible to this particular chemistry. So that's lambda-cyhalothrin. That's available in a few different products. So we looked at both comparison of two different branches of the colony and testing the kit after about a week to see if they can be reused. And yeah, they can be reused. So yeah, this is where things start to get real interesting. So looking at, you can see the CPL colony is that green line. And so those are the susceptible ones. What we're looking for here is the LC50, or the lethal concentration 50. In the case of one of these, the LC50 was an order of magnitude or 10 times higher. In the case of one here, we've got 100 times difference. So there's some grave, which means that we're looking at tolerant populations or resistant populations. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I thought I've just finished analyzing some of these. Thought I'd included more of them. So anyway, forage pests were also present with Lygus. Of course, we have multiple species of Lygus, and they all have pretty broad host ranges. But in this case, outside clover and red clover were particularly problematic in some areas. Some plots had weevils in sweet clover trials. I still haven't gotten the identity on these ones, so I'm still waiting to hear. Probably sweet clover weevil, though. Another cytona, much like pea leaf weevil. Spotted wing Drosophila for sharp. Our provincial fruit specialist, continues to monitor for these with baited traps. He's finding them all over the province. So they are well established. And overwintering here, if it ends in berry, they're on the menu, and could be really problematic for fruit growers. They'll also attack tomatoes in a pinch as well. So, and this is the last insect I'll talk about. This is black vine weevil, another in our list of weirdies for the season. This is a large weevil, about 1.2 and 1.3 centimeters long, and pretty chunky, and pretty resistant to being stood on. So they are very, very tough. I have a bit of admiration for these animals. They're tough as nails, pardon me. Their elytra are fused, so even if they wanted to fly, they couldn't. And so that's their forewings or their wing covers. What a lot of people think of as their wing covers. Yeah, they're fused, so they get around strictly by walking. So where the heck did they come from? Larvae get moved around in contaminated landscape plantings and nursery stock. So they were detected at one site in Saskatoon, or in Saskatchewan, pardon me, and the grower is working very hard to eradicate these. We don't want these as an established population. There are registered products to control them, and no issues of resistance in Canada that I'm aware of. So, there's a lot of opportunity to control that population. And finally, exceedances of two major insecticidal modes of action, or two major active ingredients. One was chlorantraniliprole. Oh, pardon me. I shouldn't be including commercial trade names. But anyway, the long and short of it is this was detected at a great exceedance. So you can see what the ALRV is, or the aquatic life reference value for acute invertebrates. So that is the value that kills the majority of aquatic invertebrates. And it was, you can see there, almost 100 times what that value was. It was hot enough to hurt fish. The next one was chlorpyrifos, which is not registered anymore. So the last permitted use was 2023, and this was detected at levels that exceed the ALRVs. Oh, and with that, what's left of my voice is hung out. I'll try to address any questions. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, James. We'll now take and address questions. If right at the moment there's none in the chat. James, I guess one question I was wondering, are there certain insects that we should